Welcome, everyone, to Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, along with IrishBreakdown.com. My name is Vince DiDario, and I'm joined today by Jesse Stiers, and we have an abbreviated show for everyone today.
But a lot of
There is
topics.
hockey. Well, there's a lot to talk about, number one, like as you mentioned. There's a lot to talk about, and limited time to do it because the hockey game, I believe, starts at 6:30 today. Which means pregame starts at 6:15, which means we are out at 6:11 of all times. So we got a lot to do today. And the first thing I want to bring up, Jesse, and I know obviously you weren't on the show yesterday, and we got the news around 4:30 that Lou Holtz passed away. And basically from like 4:30 on until right now, so a little over 24 hours, we've just seen nothing but we talked about it a bunch on the show, what he meant to us, just how he affected our lives, whatever the case may be, stories about meeting him, whatever. I want to give you an opportunity to give your thoughts on Lou Holtz. I obviously you're a lot younger than I am. You're a lot younger than your dad, obviously. And so Lou Holtz may mean something different to you than it did to us. And so I just want to kind of give you the floor to start off with and kind of give your thoughts on Lou Holtz since he passed away yesterday at the age of 89.
Yeah, Vince, I think that for someone like me, you just appreciate Lou Holtz's greatness because obviously I wasn't around, quite yet between the years that he was at Notre Dame, but you just heard of the success. And I think one of the cooler things that I attribute to Lou Holtz is one of my best friend's dads played safety at the University of Notre Dame, and he got recruited by Lou Holtz. And that was kind of, in their heyday. They didn't quite win a national championship when he was there, but I'm pretty sure they won one of those Orange Bowls. So, just hearing his dad talk about Lou Holtz, the influence that he had, how great of a person he was, it was just really cool to hear. And it made me kind of jealous that I didn't get to see Lou Holtz in action. And when I also think of Lou Holtz, I think of his. You sent that video this morning. I just remember being at my friend's house, always watching like Final College Game Day show or Final College Wrap Up. I can't remember the exact name. And you've got Mark May, Lou Holtz, and Reese Davis just continuously. It was the best thing for a football fan because all they did was talk about college football for like 3 straight hours. And so I remember being over at my friend's house late Saturday nights, just hanging out with my friends, us laying on the couch, watching that, playing video games. Just that's what I so to is just kind of what he did post-coaching career. But I wish I would have had the opportunity to be around to see him in action. And obviously, the success that Notre Dame had because he built up Notre Dame. He brought back that resurgence kind of into the early 2000s when I was really coming into my own as a Notre Dame fan. So really sad to see, obviously a huge influence on Notre Dame, but also college football and just one of the greatest, I think, motivators that we'll ever see in college football.
Yeah, I mean that, and I think that's a big piece of it, right? It was the motivation piece of it, the man that it was not the coach, but the man that was the man. And I think that's what a lot of people take away. You've got the Holtz's Heroes Foundation that is started by all of his former players, where they reach out and they, do all kinds of community service and everything. And they do that in his name because that's who he was, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. People who are not sports fans know who Lou Holtz is, basically. And I think that's where it kind of hits home. And that's why it's national news. He wasn't just a football coach at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And obviously he's one of the more successful, college coaches that ever lived. I did not realize that he's the only head coach to take 6 different schools to a bowl game as the head coach. Like, what? I mean, that's impressive. And most of the time he was taking over programs that needed help, that needed, to be brought back, so to speak. And he did that in a lot of different ways. And so yeah, sad day, obviously yesterday, the outpouring of, thoughts and prayers and all of those different things coming in for the Holtz family. And they actually announced his, funeral and arrangements and all of those kinds of things today. I have it right here somewhere. Let's see. Here we go. The funeral arrangements are there's a visitation on Sunday, March 15th from 7 to 10 p.m. at the Basilica of the Sacred Heart at Notre Dame. And then a mass of Christian burial the next day, March 16th at 1 p.m. at the Basilica. And then following at the Cedar Grove Cemetery at Notre Dame. And the mass will be live streamed. So obviously there's not going to be a ton of room for everybody. And then obviously if you're out of town, then you can live stream that mass if you are so inclined. Kind of give your last respects to Lou Holtz and all that he was able to give to this world, as well as the University of Notre Dame. So on that cheery note, let's kind of flip gears, because this is a sports talk radio show, and we have some sports to talk about. And I'm sure that Lou would want it no other way. But talk about Notre Dame football and all the fun things that go along with it. And so, Jesse, here, this is our first topic today is one that we've been trying to talk about for a little while now, and it kept getting bumped. And even though it kept getting bumped, we've gotten even more information and more
data
in preseason, talk about this particular, topic. And that topic is CJ Carr. And CJ Carr, obviously, he was a redshirt freshman at Notre Dame this past fall, had a good to great season, depending on how you look at it. Has taken the Notre Dame quarterback position to a different level, so much so that the 26th season, all of a sudden, people are excited. And people are excited about Notre Dame football for many reasons, but primarily they have the elusive quarterback that, and I'm not saying elusive like he runs away from people. I'm saying elusive as in Notre Dame hasn't had an elite quarterback like this in a long time, in a couple of decades, probably, is what I would say to that. And people are noticing. It's not just us. There's a lot of people out there that are noticing, Jesse. And we kind of want to just talk a little CJ Carr, and we want to talk about some of these preseason accolades that are already coming his way.
Yeah, I think that, you hit on a really good point there. CJ Carr is starting to get that recognition as one of the best players in the country. And I think it's really funny because we've gotten into that part of the college football cycle where the end of the season is over. We're getting ready to approach spring ball. Before you know it, fall camp will be here, and boom, the next season will be, kicking off. But it's fun to see Jeremiah Love get the recognition that he deserves at the NFL Combine, being seen as probably the best player in this draft, regardless of position. And then now you've got people rolling around on CJ Carr. So a lot of good buzz coming Notre Dame's way. And you talked about it in college football and really any level of football, but obviously the higher you get, quarterback play becomes more and more important. And I think it's the most dramatic at the college level. You can't win at the highest level unless you have a really, really good quarterback, right? I think CJ Carr is everything that Notre Dame has missed ever since Jimmy Clausen, Brady Quinn. He's an upgraded Ian Book. He has a great arm. He's great decision-making. So I think it's really cool that we get this opportunity to talk about, CJ Carr and specifically the top returning quarterbacks coming into this college football season.
Yeah, and so we've kind of compiled some lists that some people have put together, and we're just going to talk about it, kind of dissect it a little bit for the first part of the show here. And obviously, we wouldn't be bringing these lists up if CJ Carr wasn't at the top or towards the top of all of them. And so let's just kind of jump into this. The most recent one that has come out, Jesse, is Bill Connolly from ESPN, and he's obviously a well-known name when it comes to big time college football. And so he put out his top 10 list of college quarterbacks for the 26th season, and he's got CJ Carr at number 1, which I think is very interesting. And I'll just kind of quickly go through his top 10 list and then why he put CJ Carr at the top. So at number 1, he's got CJ Carr. At number 2, he's got Julian Sayin from Ohio State. Number 3, Trinidad Chambliss. Number 4, Arch Manning. Number 5, Jaden Mayava. Number 6, Dante Moore. Number 7, Drew Mestamaker. Number 8, Gunnar Stockton. Number 9, Brendan Sorsby. And number 10, Byram Brown. Okay. First off, Jess, we're going to go through a couple of these lists, but right off the bat, this list in particular, does anything jump out at you? Is anybody in a spot where maybe they shouldn't be or not in here? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, when I first saw the list, there's 3 things that stuck out to me. Obviously, you have CJ Carr at number 1. So it's always, good to see your kind of hometown quarterback be number 1. And then what also stuck out was Arch Manning at number 4 with Julian Sayon and Trinidad Chambliss above him. And then honestly, Vince, one of the more glaring things was seeing Dante Moore come in at number 6 on Bill Connolly's list from ESPN. Because if I'm Dante Moore, I don't know why I didn't go into the draft this season knowing that this quarterback class is a lot weaker than if you read this list. You read this list and it's like, I don't know if Dante Moore is ever going to be better than those quarterbacks at the college level. So really interesting to see someone who foregone the NFL, decided to come back for another season of college, not being sort of at the top of that list, So that caught me off guard, first and foremost. But obviously, we sit up here and we praise CJ Carr, and we probably have a little bit of an inflated, expectation / what we think of CJ Carr. But to see other people kind of validate our thought or our, I guess you could say, biasy about how CJ Carr or how good CJ Carr is and the potential that he can have going into next season, I think that's the cool part of this list.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's always fun to see CJ Carr at the top. And that's not necessarily going to be the case on all these lists that we talk about. But for this particular list is Bill Connolly. And he did explain why he has CJ Carr at the top. And this is what he had to say. Quote, he sort of looked like a redshirt freshman against Miami in week 1 of last season, but that was about it. He fell just short of leading a comeback win against the Hurricanes, then pretty much torched all other opposition. Sure, he had a spectacular run game at his disposal, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, combining for 2,046 yards and 29 touchdowns, and both are gone now. But Notre Dame ranked first nationally in 3rd and long success, 7 or more yards to go. When Carr had to make a throw, he did so. Carr isn't exactly your modern dual threat guy. He doesn't scramble much, and he's not a threat to punish defenses for turning their backs on the quarterback in man coverage, but he also doesn't take sacks, both because of quick decision-making and the fact that he might have the best offensive line in the country protecting him. He's accurate, he has a big arm, and by the end of 2025, he was one of the most reliable passers in the sport. That is some pretty big praise for a guy who has 1 season under his belt. I think we can all agree CJ Carr got better as the season went on. He got more decisive with his throws. I haven't seen arm strength and accuracy like him in a really, really long time, especially in a gold helmet. And everything is here. Everything is on the roster. Everything is being set up, whether it's the schedule, whether it's his receiving core, whether it's the running backs, whether it's the offensive line. Like, everything is setting up for CJ Carr to have a pretty historic season, if we're being honest.
Yeah, Vince, I think that's what makes all of this really exciting is everything is coming together. And I think you could argue the final cherry on top that Notre Dame has missed is obviously a quarterback like CJ Carr, but also their skill positions just being stacked like they are. There's just athlete after athlete after athlete on pretty much every offensive position. So that's what makes this super exciting is that this team is really geared up to make a big run. I kind of wanted to highlight some of the stuff that was said in there. Like Conley said, Carr isn't your modern day dual threat guy. He doesn't scramble much, and he's not a threat to punish defenses for turning their backs on quarterback and man coverage. I think, Vince, though, that being a guy like that who doesn't see a lot of man coverage, who isn't going to run around and make a ton of extra plays with his feet, I think that translates to the next level so well because of his ability to read coverage, make decisions. Yeah. And he talked about the quick decision making that's what you have to do against really complex coverages in the NFL. It's like I think quarterbacks that rely on, playing man or their ability to escape on their feet, when they get to the NFL, they don't have that escape route as nearly as much, and they struggle because they don't know how to just sit back and read defenses and make those quick, accurate decisions. And that's something that CJ Carr thrives on. His ability to read zone coverage is really tremendous and going to help him, at the next level. And I think, a lot of that too is teams had a hard decision to make. USC wanted to sit back and test CJ Carr, and they said, okay, well, we'll just run the ball on you. And anytime, teams kind of loaded the box up more, CJ Carr would punish them too. So I don't think CJ Carr's success was directly because of that run game. He is a tremendous quarterback, and I'm anxious to see what he can do with more tools at his disposal in the offensive room. Getting those wide receivers, having a really good offensive line obviously is going to help. And then, obviously it's the running back room isn't going to be Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, but, Aeneas Williams is going to be a really solid running back as well.
No, I don't think the running game is going to be an issue, especially behind what we think is going to be a very, very good offensive line as well. And so, CJ Carr is going to have time in the pocket to make those decisions. And he's one of the most prepared quarterbacks I've ever been around. And he is someone that I'm very interested to see what an offseason with him as the starter is going to look like from a preparation standpoint and a scheme standpoint, all of those different things. I mean, obviously people are trying to throw all kinds of stuff at him, and, it got to him at times, but he adjusted very, very quickly. He's got a very high football IQ, and I think that's the exciting part to go along with the gifts, the physical gifts that he obviously has as well. It's fun to watch. I'm glad he wears a gold helmet. I'll just leave it at that. I'm excited for Notre Dame's season because of that. So that was Bill Connolly's top 10 list. We got a couple more here to go over. We've got Tom Fornelli of Cover 3. He put out his top 10 returning quarterbacks, top 10 returning starters at quarterback. Here's how his list goes. It's a little bit different. Number 1, CJ Carr from Notre Dame. Number 2, Dante Moore of Oregon. Number 3, Arch Manning, Texas. Number 4, Julian Sayin, Ohio State. Number 5, Darian Mensah from Miami. Number 6, Brendan Sorsby from Texas Tech. Number 7, Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss. Number 8, Jade Mayava from Southern Cal. At number 9, Josh Hoover from IU. And number 10, Gunnar Stockton from Georgia. So, what stands out to you about this list, maybe even in comparison to Donnelly's list, Jess?
Yeah, I think that, the when you look at this list, it's largely the same pool of players, but then, some of the new names, or, I guess if you did like a little cross comparison, Darian Mensah, the quarterback that's now at Miami, Josh Hoover, those were two guys that weren't on the prior list. And then, I talked about on the last one, expecting to see kind of Dante Moore and Arch Manning a little bit higher. You do see this on this list, Dante Moore coming at 2. Yeah, Arch Manning coming in at 3. I think that's more of appropriate placing for those guys.
Sure.
I'm not sold on Julian Sayin. He has the, just first-round wide receivers all over the place between Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. Like and when they needed him to step up in a big game, AKA the Big Ten Championship, the first round of the college football playoffs, I didn't think he did a lot to really help his team kind of go to the next level when they had a tremendous defense. You're going to see a lot of guys drafted from that Ohio State defense coming up in this draft. So I thought actually Julian Sayin was kind of the liability of that Ohio State team. He wasn't ready to lead a team to a national championship. And I respect that CJ Carr is above him because I think CJ Carr can step up in the big moments with less around him in comparison to Julian Sayin. So, again, Dante Moore being higher on this list is where I expected him. Arch Manning, kind of the rest is just kind of, outside of the top 5 is a little bit of fluff. Like seeing Darian Mensah at number 5, I think the guy is highly overrated, coming out of Duke and now going over to Miami and all the drama that's come with that. I need to see a little bit more from him. especially production at the highest level. And I think that's what makes, the guys in the top of this list so, I guess, more respectable. As CJ Carr has played, really good football at a high level. Dante Moore, obviously, did as well, going deep in the college football playoff. I don't think we've seen the best out of Arch Manning yet. I think he still has a lot of good football left in him. And obviously, we just talked about Julian Sand as well. But to kind of wrap this all up on this list, we now have two, lists between Bill Conley, Tom Fornelli, guys who are really highly respected in the college football world, and they both have CJ Carr at the top of the list, Vince. And what this does for me is we start encroaching on that E word again. What does this do for expectations for everyone?
Exactly.
When you see CJ Carr at the top of these lists, 4 or 5 months before the season's about to start?
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second. The interesting piece of this is, the first list that we had Trinidad Chambliss at 3. This one has him at 7. And then our final list that we're going to kind of talk about, Brooks Austin. Okay. He's from the Film Guy Network. Okay. So take that for whatever it's worth.
His own network, but this is a guy that studies a lot of football. Right. His roots are in the SEC, but I like seeing someone like this because I know that he's watching a lot of football. He's not just pulling things out of the air. I know the guy, and especially the quarterback position. So when I saw this list, I was like, yes, I can't wait to see how this one shakes out.
Well, this one shakes out a little bit differently. This is the one list that does not have CJ Carr at the top. It has Trinidad Chambliss at the top. He's at the number 1 spot. CJ Carr falls to number 2. Darian Mensah, to your point, I agree with you, a little overrated. He's at number 3, ahead of number 4, Arch Manning, and number 5, Dante Moore. And then a rise for Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover is now at 6, the new IU quarterback.
He's from TCU, right?
Correct. Yes, he is. Drew Mestamaker, former North Texas quarterback, now at Oklahoma State. He's at 7.
He followed his coach there.
Yep. And then Gunnar Stockton from Georgia is at 8. Julian Sand falls all the way to 9. And then Sam Levitt, who also is a recent transfer, is at 10. So thoughts on this list, and I guess once you give your thoughts on this list, which one of the 3 lists do you think we should be taking the most seriously, or that you think matches what you think? How about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So, first and foremost, it's a little bit shocking to see Trinidad Chambliss at number 1. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he belongs in this top 5 of the list, but this is a guy where it's been a process. I think he's kind of close to maxing out on his ceiling, and that's fine. I think CJ Carr has a ton more potential. I think we're going to see more out of CJ Carr long term. I think we're going to see more out of him at the next level. Trinidad Chambliss, obviously a guy who started the D2 level, transferred his way in, got a shot at Ole Miss because actually the guy that was supposed to be the starter kind of got hurt, and then he took over and hit the ground running. So I'm not fully bought in on a guy who was, and I don't mean this in a rude way, a career kind of Division II guy, right? And then got put into a good offense, obviously with Charlie Weiss Jr., Lane Kiffin, those are some of the best offensive minds. So give kudos to him. He played really well. I thought he played well in the playoffs as well, but I think he's hit his ceiling is where I'm at on that. So, is he a top returning guy coming back next year? Sure. Would I put him at the top of my list? No, I don't think so. CJ Carr coming in at 2. I can live with that, Vince. CJ Carr doesn't need to be number 1 on everyone's list for me to get validation at the end of the day. If I see CJ Carr at 8 or 9, then it's all right, we need to have
that. That's a little more egregious. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, let's have some conversations here, and probably too if you knock him out of the top 5, I'm all right, what are we missing here a little bit? So CJ Carr at number 2, not really worried about. Darian Mensah at 3, above Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Julian Sand. I got
a problem with that. I have a huge problem with that, actually. Yeah.
I'm not completely on board, for a guy where, yes, there might be a ton of potential there, but we just haven't seen any of it. At least with CJ Carr, we've seen that on-field performance at the high level. I haven't seen that from Darian Mensah. And again, the rest after that, it's good to see Josh Hoover on this list. I think he's, a really good quarterback, and obviously being paired with Kurt Cignetti is going to help him out because look at, what those quarterbacks have done under Signetti. I mean, a guy went on and won the Heisman, is probably going to be the number one pick. So, if we're playing, track record here, Josh Hoover probably stands a good chance. And then last but not least, it was good to see Sam Leavitt on this list. I think he kind of fell off last season at Arizona State, went through some of those injuries, and now I believe he transferred over. He transferred to one. I can't remember if it was LSU by the time it was all said and done. Yeah,
it's LSU.
So, he's going to be obviously performed really well at Arizona State with Dillingham. I think he's going to do really good, obviously, with Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. at LSU. So it was good to see him on this list. I would be surprised, honestly, if we don't see him kind of rise by the time this season ends.
I don't want to go too far down the LSU, Sam Leavitt rabbit hole, but I feel like Sam Leavitt was like the last quarterback standing when the quarterback carousel was kind of going around, and LSU was like, okay, I guess we pick you. That's
but I
what
would take him over some of those other guys, Vince. Like, I would take him over Sorsby, who Texas Tech spent a lot of money to get from Cincinnati. Like, I don't know if the injuries played a part in this, but I like Sam Leavitt. So
I would take him over Sorsby. Would you take him over Mensa?
I would, because he's at least made a playoff and shown me that he can play at a high level. Granted, that was Big 12 and that sort of thing, but I thought he did really well. I think, again, everyone is kind of really preying on Mensa's ceiling and potential, but I just haven't seen it yet. So I would take, me being more, I guess you could say, conservative in this approach, I would take him over Mensa.
Okay, fair enough. So which list is more true to the Jesse Steyer's top 10?
I would have to say Tom Fornelli's list that had CJ Carr at 1, Dante Moore 2, Arch Manning 3, Sayin 4, Darian Mensah 5. I probably would have Trinidad a little bit higher. I'd have Maeva a little bit higher. I'd drop Sorsby. I dropped Sorsby out of Fornelli's list. I really don't think he's very good, but everyone else I can live with on that list. And I think most importantly, he got the top 5 right. Like, exactly. I really like that top 5.
Yep, and that's my biggest thing too. Well, if you get the top 5 right, then I think you're in good shape. I think 6 through 10, that's all opinion at that point. Like, okay, you want to bring in Josh Hoover at 9? Okay, that's fine. I mean, I think a little bit of that is the Fernando Mendoza, like coattails a little bit. You know what I mean? Oh, we're going to bring in this kind of unknown guy, and he's going to come into the IU program, and all of a sudden he'll end up being a Heisman Trophy winner. I feel like Josh Hoover is benefiting from that just a little bit. And so, I mean, we'll see obviously what he does with IU, but I feel like he's on the coattails of what they were able, even going back to Chris Rourke, right? Rourke and then Mendoza and now Hoover, like, this is going to be a pattern of like 1-year wonders at IU, right? So I think that he is working off of that just a little bit, but I think the top 5 is pretty legit with Carr, Moore, Manning, Sayin, and Mensah. I think that's pretty legit from a top 5 standpoint. And that's probably the way I would have it as well. Real quick, because we do have to get into a break, Jess, what are your realistic expectations for CJ Carr? Not necessarily from like you expect him to hit this number, passing yards or touchdown passes or whatever. Like, but what is your expectation for CJ Carr going into 26?
Yeah, my expectation for CJ Carr going in this 2026 season is I expect him to be the leader on offense first and foremost. I think last year, obviously, a little bit of that burden was taken off his shoulders, having Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, 2 guys who are going to be drafted most likely in the first round. I just really want him to step up and be that leader, take ownership of the offense. Everything goes through CJ Carr. CJ Carr is just orchestrating a well-oiled machine, whether that's reading coverages, getting into the right check, getting into the right pass play, getting into the run play, and continuously being mature enough for the moment. Because there's going to be times in the season, Vince, no matter if you're playing, the best team on your schedule, the worst team on your schedule, you're going to have things to overcome. Not everything is going to go your way when it should. And I think, that's going to be what I need to see the most out of CJ Carr is his ability to lead this team, And really, and we talk about this a lot, shoulder the expectations, not only for himself, because there's lofty expectations, but obviously, a team like Notre Dame and taking them on another deep, playoff run. I think if he focuses on like what Marcus Freeman talks about, team glory, then I think the rest of it will take care of itself. And at the end of the season, he'll have a tough decision to make. Do I return another year to Notre Dame, or do I go on and enter my name in the NFL draft?
That's true. Yeah, no, I think if he has the season that I think we feel like he should have, I think I don't see how he doesn't jump, right? I would be the first one in line to say I'm excited about him coming back if he decides to do that in 27, but I feel like it would be a no-brainer for him to jump into the NFL draft, but it's going to be a competitive quarterback draft. There's no doubt about it. My expectations for him at Notre Dame this year, obviously, like you said, be a leader on offense. I think he is now. He's not just the guy along for the ride, so to speak. The game he was never a game manager, but he was never the guy. It was always Jeremiah Love. It was Jeremiah Love this, Jeremiah Love that. Rightfully so. It's the best player in the NFL draft in 26. Now this is CJ Carr's offense, and they are going to go as CJ Carr goes. And I think that is my expectation this year. The numbers will take care of themselves. I'm not worried about that. Obviously, this is a very manageable schedule for Notre Dame. And, what is he going to do when the expectations aren't met in a specific game? Can he bring them back? Can he put the team on his shoulder? Can he do all of those kinds of things? I think that he can. And I think he's going to have a bunch of big moments in the playoff as well. So looking forward to seeing what CJ Carr can do for this team. But all right, we have gone way over, as we always do when we're always worried that we don't have enough content. And so we're going to jump into a quick break here. And on the other side, Marcus Freeman came out of hibernation a little bit and did an interview that we've got some audio cuts from. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. You are listening to Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat along with IrishBreakdown.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat along with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Vince D'Addario. That's Jesse Stiers. And it's a bit of a sprint to the finish line here, Jesse. We are going to be out in about a half an hour as Notre Dame hockey has a game at 6:30. Pregame starts at 6:15. And so we don't have a whole lot of time left. But what we do have time for is to talk a little Marcus Freeman, because there's always time to talk Marcus Freeman. He was on Good Morning Football on the NFL Network this morning and obviously talked about a variety of topics. And one of them was legendary former Notre Dame coach Lou Holtz, who passed away yesterday. And they asked Freeman how Holtz's legacy still impacts the Notre Dame program today.
And when you think of his career, you think of greatness, you think of excellence. I still hear the year of 1988, the national championship year, every day around here. And but I think you think about his teams as a whole, his tenure as a whole at Notre Dame, the impact he made on this university. Like, everybody loved Coach Holtz, and everybody talks about him in a way that, as a current head coach, you say, you know what, when I'm done coaching or when my time is up, I hope I can make an impact the way Coach Holtz did at Notre Dame, but also in college football. So his legacy will live on, and his impact will still be felt here in South Bend.
One thing we know about Marcus Freeman, as we are joined by the illustrious Sean Stiers. What's up, Sean? One thing we know about Marcus Freeman is he embraces everything about Notre Dame, and he embraces the past and the history of Notre Dame. And he embraces the success of the past and the history of Notre Dame. And nobody embodies that better than Lou Holtz. And we all know that Marcus Freeman, went to Lou Holtz on a number of occasions, and seek his advice on how it is to be the head coach at the University of Notre Dame, and all of the things that comes with, because it is a very unique position. And I'm sure that this loss hit Marcus hard. And that's why he was asked about that. Anything stand out to you guys when you hear that cut?
I think the things that stick out the most is him talking about kind of the impact or the legacy that Lou Holtz left. Just, when walking around Notre Dame, you obviously probably still hear about Lou Holtz, and he's talked about. I think what's really cool, though, about Marcus Freeman and Lou Holtz is I think that they're actually really similar coaches, just in different time or different eras at Notre Dame. I think both coaches thrive on their relationships with their players. I think both of them are excellent recruiters. So getting, I would say that Marcus Freeman has kind of restored that talent that Lou Holtz established at Notre Dame, and both guys who have a ton of impact on, not only football, but the rest of the university and the community around them. And I'll even go so much to say that if Marcus Freeman, wins a national championship like Lou Holtz did, I think you're going to see a lot of comparisons 20, 30 years down the road about talking about, legacies and coaches' impact at Notre Dame.
Hello, gents. How are you?
Oh, we're fantastic. I know you're doing well based on the way the women played today. So
yeah,
good day for
we'll
you.
Talk about that in a little bit.
We definitely will. But your thoughts on Marcus and Lou and all of that?
Yeah, I'd echo kind of what Jesse was saying, because like when you look at all the comments from all the former players and people connected to Notre Dame, people who knew Lou Holtz, and like I talked yesterday about Reggie Brooks, and Reggie runs that Holtz's Heroes Twitter account. Like, if you ever see the Holtz's Heroes, Reggie runs that organization down in Dallas, and I think he is the primary person who posts on that Twitter X account. And there's a lot of talk about family, and when you hear those guys, the Holtz's Heroes, the Holtz guys talk about Coach Holtz, that's one of the things that they had, a very closely connected, tightly bonded family. And that's obviously one of the big things that you hear about Marcus Freeman. I think that is a very common tie. And there have been other coaches who have had that to some degree as well. But as we talked about yesterday, Vince, the shadow is long left by Lou Holtz. He is still the last Notre Dame football coach to win a national championship, and he's the standard by which everyone, is held to at Notre Dame, and that includes Marcus Freeman currently.
And I really like the way he said, he's like, someday when I'm, I've hung it up and my tenure is in the past. I hope people talk about me the way they do about Lou Holtz. Like that's about as much respect as you can give somebody that you want to be,
Yeah. Right.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
You're good.
It's just like you talk about respect and stuff like that. And I find it interesting. Look, I didn't expect Ryan Day to come out and quote some soliloquy about Lou Holtz. They obviously, butted heads for the last couple of years, starting with the stuff with Lou Holtz calling Ryan Day's team soft. Okay. But Lou Holtz freaking played for Ohio State. He helped Ohio State win a national championship as a player in 1968. I would expect Ohio State to come out and say something about a college football Hall of Fame coach who began his path to that at that institution and helped them win a national championship. So again, I don't expect Ryan Day to come out and say anything, but you would think that frickin' Ohio State would. Right. And I think it's pretty low class that they haven't said anything by now. I'll just say that.
I'm sure the other places that he was head coach at have put something out. I'm sure. I don't know that without looking. Arkansas, Minnesota. I'm sure that they've all put South Carolina. All of that. I didn't realize. I said this earlier, Sean. I didn't realize he's the only head coach in college football history that took 6 schools to a bowl game. Like that's impressive.
It's pretty amazing.
When bowl games were not saturated as much either.
Well, good point.
There were fewer games. That's exactly
right.
And
it meant more. Winning it, going to bowl games and winning them meant a lot more.
Yeah. No, great point. Well, obviously, Marcus Freeman was asked about, other things, but he was also asked about Holtz's 1988 national championship team, of course, being Notre Dame's last national champion. And they asked Freeman how that motivates him to now win a title this year or anytime for that matter.
Look, I don't need any added motivation, but it's a reminder for me that winning a national championship isn't for me personally. It's for this place. It's for the players that bleed and give their all to Notre Dame. And there's nothing more I would want to do but to give this university its next national championship. And so I think we have to remember that, because you start to think it's about you. I think, that selfish mentality isn't going to achieve anything great. But if you continue to remember, it's about other people. It's about working to make sure that this place receives the reward. The players you coach receive that reward. That's what I think about when I think about 1988. It's been too long since this university has been able to say it's national champions.
Is that the way you anticipated he was going to answer that question, Sean?
I'm making a habit of this, keeping myself muted when it's time to start talking. I really wasn't sure what exactly he was going to say, but I think that he summed it up pretty well. I mean, I don't think he needs, any extra pressure or motivation to want to win a national championship. It's a priority at Notre Dame to win a national championship. It's been a priority for the last going on 38 years to win a national championship. They were as close as they've ever been 2 years ago. And I think that getting bumped out of the playoffs, obviously, this year, not making it to the playoffs gave them that extra motivation. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of all they need. But, now they'll have kind of that little angel sitting over their shoulder, watching down and maybe help nudge things along the way this year.
Yeah, you kind of stole it from me there a little bit. I don't think Marcus Freeman needs any extra motivation. I think Marcus Freeman is obviously tremendous about creating motivation, just like Lou Holtz was. And I think that's what's so cool. Like, they are very similar coaches,
agree.
Stuck in completely different eras. And so to me,
just packaged differently, a little bit differently, but they're very, very similar. Absolutely. I
think what's really poetic about this whole situation, as poetic it can be, in something so sad and that comes along with death, is Notre Dame is primed up for this season in terms of schedule. They've got the quarterback, they've got the transfer portal, they've got the defense, they've got the coaching staff. everything is in place. And now you've got good old Lou kind of hovering over the stadium for this next season. And so I think what's really cool is what this could turn into. Notre Dame potentially, winning that first national championship since Lou Holtz, and kind of in memory of Lou Holtz this season. And because that he's going to play a big part on the season, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, some sort of decal on the helmets or something like that. But
or the Lou
again,
on the front tab like they had Era a couple years ago. Yeah.
Right. And so I just think that, it's just kind of that extra angel on their shoulder that'll be hovering over Notre Dame Stadium this fall. And it'll make things, again, more poetic when it's all said and done. Hopefully this thing ends with the national championship.
Did you guys see the pictures of the Jumbotron at Notre Dame Stadium and the logo that they had? The elf and the 1812 overture, and it just said Lou. I have a feeling, just a hunch, that could be the patch right there. That's the logo that they kind of put out there yesterday. But I guess we'll all wait and see how that all materializes. Of course, Marcus Freeman was interviewed on the NFL Network, so I think we all can imagine.
Yes. I'm going to cut you off there because we're going to run really short on time.
Okay.
Because this next break is a little bit longer.
We'll save the last two cuts. We'll save the last two cuts for tomorrow.
I think we can hit those tomorrow. Little Freeman talking about the NFL, and then he was asked Michigan or USC. I thought that was a fun one.
Yeah, a little Manti Te'o question. So that's
we got to be done by 11 after, so we better get this break and
all right, so let's break now, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a little Notre Dame women's basketball, who just defeated Miami down at the ACC championship. So we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat along with IrishBreakdown.com. Welcome back to Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat along with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Vince D'Addario along with Sean Stiers and Jesse Stiers. It's a Stiers sandwich. And we just got done talking a little Marcus Freeman. We'll have some more of that tomorrow, which is exciting. But today at 1:30, the Notre Dame women's basketball team took on the Miami Hurricanes in their first round matchup. It was the second round overall of the ACC tournament down in Duluth, Georgia. And that is where Sean Stiers joins us from. And he's obviously the play-by-play voice. And so why don't you give us a little rundown of how everything went? We know the Irish won, but how did it all take place, Sean Stiers?
Oh, that's a good question, Vince. I thought you were going to leave it a little more close-ended. I was just going to say they won. They did a good job of adjusting, I think, as the game went on. They were really sharing the ball well early on, and Miami adjusted. They went to kind of a 1-3-1 zone, and it caused Notre Dame some problems for a little bit. But then they came out of the chutes in the second half, led by 18 a couple of different times, and then all of a sudden Notre Dame couldn't score in the fourth quarter, and it never really felt like the game was in doubt, but it went from a 19-point lead all the way down to 9. Notre Dame didn't score for like the first, it was like 5.5, almost 6 minutes, I think, of the fourth quarter, so it's like, you obviously never want to see that, but I mean, it was pretty much Hannah Hidalgo taking over like she always does. 28 points, 8 rebounds. She had 5 steals, 5 assists, and I was trying to think of, I don't know, Jesse, you were watching the game as well. How would at least part of the game, how would you describe the way Hidalgo kind of took over at times?
Yeah, I think that, I did watch the whole game. Had a day off from work. Dog was having surgery. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and watch this game. So I thought Hannah did a really good job of incorporating her teammates. And most importantly, a lot of Notre Dame players stepped up and hit some shots. And I think what was a little bit surprising to me is early on, Miami was pressing from the start, making Notre Dame earn it. And I thought that was an interesting strategy because you have some of the best guards, obviously one of the best guards in the country, in Hannah Hidalgo. And as soon as she would break that press, it was one pass and, basically an easy layup. Like Cass Prosper had one where she literally went down the whole court, I think on the, second, third possession of the game, untouched, and just goes up for a layup. And so I thought that, and Miami stuck to that for a really long time. And I thought Miami made their best runs when they got out of that, and they forced Notre Dame to kind of bring the ball up court, get into some sets, and work a little bit of offense. And Miami also started to work the ball down low at the same time. We saw their big come into action. She started to draw some fouls. And so I thought Miami should have done that from the beginning. And instead, they were kind of doing this press and putting the pressure on the guards. But it's like, you have Hannah Hidalgo. She's one of the best guards in the country. So I'm not sure why it took Miami so long to get out of that. But they were content with forcing Notre Dame to make shots. You saw Hannah Hidalgo hit a lot of perimeter shots. You saw her hit a lot of mid-range shots. They weren't allowing Notre Dame to kind of finish by the hoop. If they were going to get beat, it was because they were going to, hit shots. And so I thought Hannah did a really good job of incorporating her players on the wing. And you saw a lot of players step up and hit some threes, mid-range shots throughout the course of the game. And so that's kind of how I saw the game.
She hit a couple of threes. Ayanna Moore hit a couple of threes. And I felt like it was a pretty unsung game for Malaya Coles as well, who didn't have a big scoring game by any means. She only scored 2 points, but she had 12 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds. And there were a couple times in the first half where like she was diving for some loose balls. Yes. And there was the one, she dove and then she's sitting on the floor and she sees Prosper and she just tosses it off to Prosper and Cass goes and lays it in. So I just felt like, again, I felt like she's always done a lot of stuff that doesn't always necessarily show up in a stat sheet, but 12 rebounds show up in a stat sheet. It was just one off her career high. And, Jesse, you mentioned their big, Rashea Kyle. She only had 2 points in the first half. She ended up with 11 points in the game and another double-double, or 21st double-double of the season. But Notre Dame did a great job in the first half, really, of limiting her and making them find some other options.
That play that you're referring to where she dove on the ground and was just sitting there and found, got an assist from her backside, basically. That was a heck of a play. And I kind of had it on my phone, like off to the side while I was working. And my boss came in at one point and I ticked the volume down a little bit more. Like, no, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing going on here. Yeah, nothing going on. But no, I mean, look, Notre Dame was in control of that game, obviously, most of the game. The 10-0 run to start the fourth quarter was a little troublesome, but they rebounded, pun intended. They rebounded well to, push the lead back up and ended up winning by 15. So like their lead was never threatened per se. I just didn't like that 10-0 run, obviously. And there was a point in the first half where it felt like I think it was 23-18. Felt like forever. Like there was a neither team could score. Like it was. There was no
around it.
It was only 14-4. Notre Dame outscored them 14-4 in the second quarter. That's it. Like to your point, there was not a lot of scoring. Yeah,
it was like a drought, and I was like, "Is it still working? Is my phone going?" I kept looking at the score. Like, is it actually working? But no, I think Notre Dame controlled the tempo, and like you said, I think it was good for them to see that 1-3-1 zone because teams are going to throw stuff at Notre Dame to try to get Hannah off of her game and all of those things. So I think it was good to see that in this game, a game that they had control of. So now if they see it again against NC State, which is the next game tomorrow at 1:30, make sure you tune in. And we'll, hopefully they don't get something thrown at them that they haven't seen before, but they are obviously a very well-coached team and they are able to adjust and still be successful. They beat NC State earlier in the season, right?
They did. It's part of the 6-game winning streak that they got right now. And I expect it to be a scrap tomorrow. They pretty much took care of NC State the first time, and they were up by like 24 points, and NC State made it a little bit closer down the stretch. But I think it's going to be a closer game. And the thing that I think actually, as much as like talk around down here, no one's overly excited about being in Duluth, Georgia for this tournament because, Greensboro, North Carolina took care of the, this ACC women's basketball tournament in a lot of ways, from the teams and the coaches and everybody and the media as well. But it was in North Carolina and, so it was not that far from NC State and Duke and North Carolina. They always, especially NC State, they've always shown out, pretty well. They did there in Greensboro. There'd be a sea of red in there. Could be a little bit of a neutralizer tomorrow. It's still closer for NC State, but it's still like around a 6-hour drive for those fans. So I think it's going to be much more a pure neutral site game than what we've been used to seeing when Notre Dame has played some of these teams from Carolina in the tournament in these past few years.
I know we're getting close here. I think Notre Dame getting Miami and Stanford was huge. I think that getting their feet wet in the ACC tournament was good. I think that Stanford had much more of a size that would have gave Notre Dame more trouble, probably would have wore down on them a little bit more. So I think Miami was the perfect matchup for them game one. Tomorrow's matchup, we all know Hannah's going to be really good. But I think who needs to have a good game is Cass Prosper, not only offensively, but defensively, because NC State has a good forward as well.
Well done. Way to wrap up. Good job, guys. Didn't get to hear as much as I wanted to, but we're going to have to wrap it up with that. We got Notre Dame hockey coming up next here. Notre Dame Radio Network. It is the Fighting Irish at Ohio State coming up next. Tyler Reed has got your call for Jesse Stires, Vince D'Addario, Ty back in the studio. I'm Sean Stires. We will talk to you mañana. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.